You're welcome back. Now, one of the flagship programs of the current administration is Planting for Food and Jobs. It's one of the most popular programs, but has suffered several setbacks, such as fertilizer supply, challenges among others. Now, there's a new man at the helm at the Agric Ministry, and this morning he led the launch of the refreshed, rejuvenated program, Planting for Food and Jobs 2. It was launched in the northern region, capital, Tamale, and we will be getting some images from there. But in the meantime, let's try and understand this better. Kojo braces with our Agric desk. He joins me now. Kojo, so Planting for Food and Jobs 2. How is it evolved from Planting for Food and Jobs 1?
For every policy, once you are implementing it, you will see the challenges in it and how to correct it. I think that's what they've seen. They've seen that there are some teething problems with the policy, and they need to correct it. So, one major thing with it is that the Planting for Food and Jobs 1, government was giving monies to input suppliers and the stakeholders to ensure that the thing goes on. This time, government says, well, it's not sustainable. That in the past year we spent, I think it was 3 billion. What is there to show? So now they've changed it, and now allowing the financial institutions to come in to help. So what government is going to do is to give guarantees to the banks that, okay, this is an input supplier, Kojo. We guarantee that whatever you give him, we will help him pay back.
Right.
So the banks will give that loans to the input suppliers. The input suppliers will give their input, so seeds, fertilizers, insecticides, what have you, to the people, we call them aggregators. The aggregators would have agreement with the farmers that, okay, Kojo Yankson, I'm going to give you all of the things you need to farm, including the provision of mechanization, so irrigation, the tractors and what have you to prepare your land. I'll provide them. When you are done and you harvest your crops, I'll come for the equivalent of the money I spend on your production in kind. So I don't want you to give me money, but I want you to give me produce. So when they take the produce, the aggregators take the produce, they will then also take it to the warehouse. The warehouse will be certified by the Ghana Standards Authority, the Food and Drugs Authority. And then from the warehouse, the off-takers. So for the off-takers we have, they will put the thing on the screen so that viewers can also see it. So for off-takers, we have the National Buffer Stock, NAFCO. We have the breweries, we have, the companies that need the produce. So if it's maize, the companies that need them will come for them. Now, when they come for the produce, so that's how it is. The input supply will supply to the aggregator. The aggregator supplies it to the farmer produce, and the aggregator will go for in-kind, so produce. And then the aggregator will take it to the warehouse, and then the off-takers will come for them. And the off-takers have 24 hours to make payment into the bank account. So they are working with some financial institutions. And when they make it, then the banks will also pay the input supplier. The aggregator will get percentage of whatever it brings in. So the bank will pay that, and then they pay the mechanization stuff. So that's how
the whole value chain has been created here. Now, you said in there that the aggregators are now going to take responsibility for providing things like irrigation and mechanization. What does this say for some of the peripheral government initiatives like One Village, One Dam?
So, if it's going to be provided by the Ghana Irrigation Development Authority, they also charge for the services rendered. These services will be paid for by the aggregator, not the farmer.
Right.
So as a farmer, all you need is your land. From land preparation to planting to maintaining it, whatever you need to maintain it, to harvesting, all of those processes will be supported by the aggregator.
What are the goals? What goals have been set? Are there any annual figures that they are aiming to achieve?
Okay, so they want to increase, crop yield, so that if for anything at all, in about 2-3 months, can we be food sufficient? At the end of the day, the goal is to have food safety or food security, as we do say. So they believe that if you support the farmer and there is an intermediary who is going for the produce and not money, the country will be able to store as much as we can to support the country in times of need, so that one, they will control food inflation. But it's something they are looking forward to. They think that the inflation, the food inflation has been quite terrible in the past, and that if they use this model, they can keep that under control, make food available for all of us to eat, and to ensure that people can go into farming more. Now you don't have to be scared about what capital will you need to go into farming. All you need is to have access to a land. The rest will be catered for by this policy.
Is there any targeting going on? Are they targeting particular crops, particular produce? For example, are they aiming to substitute any imports like rice?
Yeah. So they have target crops for this policy. Cereals, we have rice, there is maize, there's sorghum, there is millet. These are the ones they're targeting. When it comes to tuber, that's root crops, they're looking at yam and cassava. They're also looking at, let me refer here. Okay, so they're looking at, for vegetables, tomato, pepper, or onion. You heard it. When this Niger issue came, look at how much the onion traders take to Niger every week. So the ministry wants to get farmers to grow more onions. I've spoken about cassava, yam, and plantain. They're also looking at poultry. The poultry industry has the potential to create over 1 million jobs. But what have we done? Our poultry industry has collapsed. Now they think that through this project they can revive it. So, for example, if the farmer grows the maize, the aggregator goes for it and is in the warehouse. The poultry farmer can have some of the maize to prepare their feed, because in the poultry industry, feed is one very critical thing. So if they have it, then they can grow more. There's also talk of, having the importers of poultry product to agree to how they can seed some of the, the import that they do to the local farmers, so that the poultry industry will also, be revamped, because they think that once we are importing, we are creating jobs for some people in other jurisdictions. So that's one thing they also do. I've spoken to you about rice, maize, soybean, and sorghum as some of the things. So these are the target areas for this project.
So the new Agric Minister, Brian Achampong, is seeking to change the business model here. The banks are now going to be lending directly to the farmers with a guarantee from government. Now, we know that in the past...
maybe someone may not understand you, not directly to the farmer, but to the input supplier.
Right.
So the farmer, as for the farmer, all you need is your land. And then when you say, I have the land, the input supplier won't even come to you directly. He would go through the aggregator, because at the end of the day, the aggregator is the one that has contract to do the farmer.
Right.
So he will be coming for the produce. So everybody is insulated in a way. So the input supplier has supplied you, me, the aggregator, and he's expecting that I've supplied him some 200 million worth of input. At the end of the day, the bank would pay me directly, so that the farmer doesn't, you know how some farmers are. Sometimes you give them and it becomes problematic when they want to go sell and pay back. So now the government says we've experimented with it, it didn't work. So now when you do it, the bank will get the payment from our suppliers and they will pay you directly.
All right. Let's listen to the Agric Minister, Brian Achampong, when he launched this second phase of the initiative.
For Food and Jobs Phase 1 to food security and resilience, with a focus on the entire value chain. Mr. President, you also demanded a turnaround of the tree crop subsector, with a focus on the cocoa farmers' share of the cocoa revenue. And finally, you demanded a drastic import substitution program directed at reducing our over-reliance on food imports. On assumption of office, a thorough analysis of the sector revealed huge potentials, which, when well exploited, could lead to the achievement of the objectives set by His Excellency the President. Our assessment of the PFJ Phase 1 also confirmed that a lot of successes had been achieved in the areas of utilization of fertilizer, acceptance and adoption of improved seeds, as well as the adoption of good agronomic practices by farmers. It was also established that if we could properly utilize the existing irrigation schemes deployed by government, we will significantly improve food production for some critical crops such as rice, onion, and tomato. For example, Mr. President, your government, having committed over 1.2 billion Ghana cedis for irrigation infrastructure in the northern regions alone, I see no justification for the current state of high import of vegetables from the sub-region, in spite of the huge potential for all year-round production. Mr. President, in a recent meeting with the onion importers plying the Niger route, it was disclosed to me that on average, an amount of $2 million was spent weekly to import onions. I deem this as an embarrassment and a needless drain on our scarce foreign exchange. It was, however, refreshing to me when they disclosed that their willingness to convert their import trade to local production and trading on our irrigation schemes. Mr. President, when it comes to the production of rice, the data shows that it has improved from 667,000 metric tons in 2016 to 1,190,000 metric tons in 2022. Unfortunately, more than half of the paddy we produce is shipped out of the country, depriving local processors of access to raw materials. Indeed, we recognize the unavailability of large processors with the financial wherewithal to procure and process the paddy. This we shall fix. Mr. President, the above are examples of the potentials and bottlenecks that can easily be harnessed to the benefit of our food security and resilience agenda. Mr. President, in dealing with the wider potentials, the Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 2 has been designed as a bold, innovative, and comprehensive approach to tackle head-on the hurdles on our food security journey. The underpinning model, which is the input credit system, will solve a number of critical challenges, namely access to credit, quality of agro inputs, the unstructured markets of our agricultural produce, and low mechanization, among others. Indeed, when we rolled out the program in full, one will no longer need to mobilize upfront financing for land development and preparation, as well as seeds and fertilizer. This is very important. Mr. President, land development, seed, and fertilizers constitute about 80% of production cost. I make bold to predict that with the new slogan for agriculture going forward will be PFJ 2.0, to which all you need is access to land and all other things shall be added. Mr. President, the following crop budget analysis, using rice as an example, puts this in perspective. A farmer requires at least 40,000 Ghana cedis for the development of 1 hectare of land. Land development, 40,000 Ghana cedis. The farmer will also have to spend a minimum of 5,975 cedis per hectare on agro inputs and an additional 3,375 on other farm activities, including labor. For a new farmer intending to crop 5 hectares, that will mean raising an amount of 246,000 Ghana cedis, 246 Ghana cedis.
Right, so that was Brian Achampong. He's the Agric Minister, launching PFJ 2.0. All right, let's work out the impact of this new initiative. Dr. Charles Nyaba joins us. He's the president of the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana. Dr. Nyaba, it's always a pleasure. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Kojo.
All right, well, let's get to it. PFJ 2. I know how you feel about PFJ 1. Are you optimistic about its reincarnation?
Yeah. I do, and I think my members do. We have a high expectation because if you look at most of the challenges we face with the PFJ 1, per what we were told with the PFJ 2, those challenges are addressed. Access to credit is one of the major challenges facing farmers. Now, you look at the PFJ 1, the concentration was only supplying farmers with subsidized fertilizer and seed. And subsidized component was even negligible. It was not actually making much difference between the market price and that of the subsidized price. Now, the other challenge we face with the PFJ1 has to do with quality of fertilizer and seeds that were supplied under the PFJ1. Most of the contractors that were engaged under the PFJ1, they were just supplying anything. After all, whether farmers take it or not, they also get payment from Ministry of Finance. So it was a serious challenge, and some of us submitted recommendation to this minister and recommended that the PFJ1 should actually be reviewed. Land development is one area that is discouraging youth and women from going into new farming because, just like the minister mentioned, per my own engagement with land developers, to develop an acre, you need not less than 10,000 to do just 1 acre. So if you're a new farmer who don't have anything and you don't have access to credit, how are you going to develop 5 acres of land to be able to farm? Now that will be catered for. So for us, we are highly optimistic, and then we just hope that as he read, and then what we've seen in the document, when it comes to the implementation, it shouldn't deviate from that.
Right. Well, so what you have are expectations that this time around things will go differently. But do you see any lessons learned in Planting for Food and Jobs 2 from the errors of PFJ1? Do you see evidence that lessons have been learned?
Yeah, I think so. You know, when the PFJ1 started in 2017, it was smoothly implemented. Along the line, there were people who were not real farmers. They hijacked the whole process. So it was like whom you know, that you get contract to supply either seeds or fertilizer under the PFJ1. So if you look at the engagement that the current minister and his team are doing, I suspect that lessons have been learned. Because people who are not even belonging to the ruling government were engaged, were consulted. Real farmers who matters were consulted, whether they belong to NPP party or not. And then if you look at the way it's open to allow farmers to select the kind of service provider that they want, that they feel that those service providers provide quality inputs, I think lessons are also learned, because it was very clear under the PFJ1, people were supplying inputs because they have favorites among those who are giving contracts. Contract sums were inflated, quality inputs were supplied, and no query. Farmers complained to the authorities that matter, and nothing happened. So to me, the beginning looks good, and I think that a lot of lessons from PFJ1 have been incorporated in the PFJ2. We will only wait patiently to see the implementation, whether we are able to continue that the implementation is done. And if that is done, I tell you, most of the challenges that are enumerated in the PFJ2 are what farmers are looking for solutions for. So if those things are done, I'm sure we'll be able to increase our yields.
Right. So do you have any targets? I mean, having heard what is available now as peasant farmers, do you have any targets, percentages by which you expect yield can increase?
Yeah, so if you look at if you take 2022, for instance, the yields were very bad. And it's bad because of increase in cost of production, supply of poor quality inputs to many farmers. In fact, farmers actually became demoralized. And it contributed to low supply of food, leading to food price inflation. So it will be very difficult for me to predict at the moment, without doing any modeling, to conclude that yields will increase by 20% or 30%, because yields increase depends on a number of factors. Inputs is one, which is within our control, but about 80% of our production is rain-fed. So even if all these factors are favorable or they are made available to the farmer, and the raining pattern is not favorable, it can also impact on the yields. Until we are able to incorporate irrigation scheme With irrigation, I'm able to tell that if I do 1 hectare, I'll be able to get 40 bags, multi-bags of rice. But with rainfall, if the rain doesn't favor you, you can do everything, and then you may not still get up to the potential yields. So for now, I don't think it will be right for me to conclude on prediction, but I think we are likely to see improvement in our yields compared to PFG 1.
Right. I want to say a big thank you to you, Dr. Charles Nyaba, President of the Peasant Farmers Association.